Hi guys, Togger here with a new video, and this video will be a dungeon tier list video for World of Warcraft Classic, and more precisely, which classes or which specs are mostly sought after in dungeon groups. Like, it's a subjective video, don't get mad. Again, I feel like it depends from person to person, depends on your class, basically. If you're like a warrior, of course you will like to have a shaman in your group, obviously. If you are a mage, maybe you would not even care about a shaman. So that's all things that I've tried to consider. But let's talk as well about specs, because I do feel like a retribution paladin is not the same as a holy paladin, is not the same as a protection paladin. So again, I'm not going to do every single spec, because a warlock is a warlock to me, a mage is a mage to me, but of course there are differences between retribution paladin and the holy paladin. So let's talk about paladins first. Why not? Because I already talked about paladin. In my humble opinion, holy paladin is a A tier spec in dungeons. Well, let's talk about the tiers, right? S tier for me is like you need one, like you really need one, like you will try to make space for that class or that spec. A tier means that it is needed, but you can replace it with another A tier, for example, or any of the S tiers. For example, a healer paladin for me, holy paladin, could be replaced by a restoration, not restoration because it's obviously horde alliance, but you can replace it with a holy priest, for example. I'm playing priest. I know that a paladin would do like a good job as well. So for me, holy paladin is A tier because it could be replaced by another healer. I do believe like their aura is not significant enough, and their buff, salvation is cool, but it's not the same as in raids where you could have every single paladin buff on yourself, then you become like very strong. But like it is not as mandatory. That's how I see. But it is very welcome. Like I really love holy paladins whenever I am a DPS. Although it doesn't happen that often as a priest. I'm not really like liking dungeons grinding as a shadow priest. That's not something I like to do. But if I am a DPS, I get a holy paladin, I'm very happy. For me, again, hot take, I actually really enjoy protection paladins. And whenever I'm talking about protection paladin, I'm talking about the AoE spec. Basically, you could have like two AoE specs, like a holy prot paladin or a holy prot ret paladin. So it means that you stop at consecration, you go for prot, and then you go to retribution paladin to get like the goodies there. There are like two schools. Again, you can also go for holy shield, but that costs a lot of mana. You don't need to go for that. And I really enjoy like good protection paladin. You just need to know, look, don't snap his threat from the get-go. He doesn't have a taunt either, so give him a bit like a 2 or 3 ticks of consecration, and that would be enough to like gain the aggro and to have like a good pack. Like it's a very good AoE tank. In like boss fights, obviously not that great, but in purely AoE grinding, AoE packs, I do believe like it's one of the better classes specs in the game. Just needs like good gear. You need intellect stamina, for example. That is very important because you don't want to get and strength is not as important, and the more spell power you have, the better it becomes. But that is something you don't have at the start of the game. Obviously, phase 1 is very limited for that. Now, Retribution Paladin is for me, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like it is a wasted spot in dungeons. I'm gonna put it in D tier. I don't think there is a F tier, so I'm gonna remove it. It's a D tier for me. I'd rather not have a Retribution Paladin in my dungeons. It's maybe useful for buffs, but then again, if he just was a Holy Paladin or even just a tank, it would be way better. The DPS is not that good. It is what it is at the end of the day. But I do believe like if you have a friend that plays Retribution Paladin, it's not utterly like disastrous. You know that the DPS is not going to be that good. Yeah, he has no real AoE threat. Not threat, but like not threat with threat, but I mean like it doesn't do damage AoE wise. Like they could do in consecration. Why not if they are like deep red into a bit of holy like holy with 11 points, why not? But even then, it's not like effective enough. It does translate the same in raids, but in dungeons, like it feels kind of you could see it as a second healer, but doesn't do any damage and heals less than a healer. So it's good for utility like Bob. Why not? To save like a caster from getting too much threat, or like a snap threat from like an AoE pack going on to Mage. You could Bob him and he's safe, but then again, a lot of this can be a lot better managed by the group. Now let's talk about warriors, and I'm gonna do already a hot take. Arms and Fury is kind of the same, but for me, a warrior in a dungeon should be a tank. That's how I see it. You could run with 2 warriors, then obviously you have a DPS. But realistically, if you have a warrior that doesn't get like hit at the start, like just dungeons, not in raids, but just purely dungeons, so you don't are like you're not full consumes, you're not like full bis. I feel like you do not do a lot of damage if you don't get hit. So that's how I see, obviously. For me, I prefer, in dungeons at least, I prefer arms over fury. And that's for the simple reason where they have sweeping strikes. And sweeping strikes is then like a lot stronger than I would say Fury Warriors can do in single target pure. Obviously, single target purely, Fury is very good once you have like the good weapons, you have the gear. That's not like something that is like crazy. In raids, obviously, this is like this, and arms is like this. But I would say that at least that's how I feel. Like more strike doesn't like do enough. But I do feel like in dungeons, sometimes a more strike on a mob that is about to get healed, sometimes it can happen, is useful. But also your sweeping strikes cleave, sweeping strikes whirlwind, and obviously with having a two-hander, it does a lot of damage. And you could also tank as an arms warrior. I feel like, in my eyes, dungeons tanking as an arms warrior is very effective compared to Fury. Fury Warrior is probably the better like pure boss tank, but like an arms warrior could like AoE tank very well because of sweeping strikes, whirlwind, and you already have like full aggro on yourself, so that's quite good. But why don't I put that on S tier? Because I feel like I personally, how can I say? I personally don't think like it's not necessary. I guess it is. Well, I'm gonna put it in S tier. You know what? I'm putting in S tier. Um, that's probably the better thing. And then Fury in B tier because of sweeping strikes. Because of also like if you have to choose one tank, a arms warrior sweeping strikes tank that is able to tank is pretty good, especially like in AOE. Maybe not in like in pure boss fights, but I really need one at least like one tank. If I need one, it would be a warrior, or I'm gonna mention a bit later down the line. Protection warrior I don't like in dungeons. I'm not gonna lie, it does no damage because it has a shield. But it is like this shield, like a sword and board, right? Obviously, I'm not really that interesting, but it also like doesn't do too much threat because you just like the damage, and it gets all scaled. Like it seems so backwards that you do not really want like a tank spec, but it feels like in current metagaming, with everyone doing that much damage, you need to be holding the damage with your abilities and with your gear and with your damage, not only because of your sturdiness. Obviously, this one is like able to not die, but if I have to choose between someone that is sword and board and someone that is like a two-handed arms warrior to tank, I would choose a two-handed arms warrior or even dual wield fury warrior to tank because it will be a lot faster of a group. This is like the safer one, I would say. Maybe B tier, why not? Like, why not? If a tank is always like useful, so if you have to choose one, you would be choosing this one. But I mostly see warriors going fury or arms. They don't never really go protection these days. Now, Shadow Priest, I'm going to put it in C tier. I play Shadow Priest. It's not that good in dungeons. It's the lowest priority cost wise. Like if I have to choose one, why not? It could like be useful for um, soothing or useful for off healing. But to be fair, like it's doing more damage than red, but you have to drink way more. So obviously it's not as interesting. Um, it's not as interesting in general. Um, Healer wise, the same. Disc Priest and Holy Priest is the same for me as Holy Paladin with the same explanation. For me, they are interchangeable. If you're like doing a run with a Holy Priest or doing a run with a Holy Paladin, for me, it's not that different. Let's talk about maybe one of the best classes in the game. For me, it's mandatory to have a shaman if you're a horde. I think it's really, really good. It just enhances every single melee you have. Obviously, if you're a caster main, you're this is not resto shaman. This is resto shaman. Excuse me. Obviously, if you are like a caster main, you're going to say what the hell. But if you're a melee, Wind Fury is too good. Like you can just like basically play with a few warriors or a rogue, whatever. It will just make them better. And elemental shaman is, I would say, B tier. It does okay damage, but you have to drink a lot, but you still bring buffs, so that's why it's quite good. Enhancement shaman is on the same level as Retribution Paladin, where they have the buff, but why not play elemental shaman or resto shaman? That's how I see. Again, I might be wrong because it's like subjective. Again, I feel like if I'm a melee, I would like gladly take elemental shaman just to get Wind Fury if I have a priest in my group. But enhancement shaman is like the damage is quite low, in my opinion. It's also like very random, like the same as paladin. And AOE wise, if you want to do AOE, it will cost a lot of mana and it's not as effective, obviously. Mage for me, I'm gonna just do one. It is S tier. I think if you have the possibility to have a mage, it accelerates AoE by a lot. Like it's too good. I personally really love mages in my groups, especially the ones that are very good in AoE, in controlling polymorphing is so important. If you once you are doing LBRS, UBRS, Skullman, like not like humanoids, pretty much. It helps a lot to have a polymorph in your group. I really enjoy to have like a mage in general. It's one of the things where it doesn't quantify only on the damage side, but also like purely the polymorphs, the drinks like water for a healer, for example. That's all things that are adding up, and to me, it's like a S tier, like class in general. Like just not frost mage, but like in general, they play frost mage. It's a S tier class in dungeons. Balance druid, it's D tier. I don't even know how I can describe it. It is just not that good. It doesn't have too much AoE. Yes, it has Hurricane, but it's a long CD. Maybe the best debuff in the game, but it's a long CD. And you can do the same as the rest of Druid. Rest of Druid is B tier to me. It's not a good healer. And it doesn't have res, so you kind of are screwed whenever you're wiping. It's not a bad healer, but it's also like not mana efficient. So you will be drinking way more. I kind of like Resto Druid though because I'm playing Druid. Like I was a Druid in 2019, but whenever I remember 2019, I'm remembering me tanking dungeons instead of healing because it felt like I was way better at tanking than healing. With like gearing is like an issue because you have to have two sets. But once you have the gear, it feels like you could heal in the raids and you could do like tanks or like tank in dungeons and be very valuable. And that's why I'm gonna put. I have only one icon, but Feral Druid. Think it about like Feral Druid as a tank. This is like for me tank. You could DPS. DPS it would be B tier. It doesn't bring that much, like except a buff towards melees. But even then, if they pop MCPs, it's quite good. If they don't pop MCPs, it's not that good. For me, S tier because I think Guardian Druids are very, very good. Like, if you can choose, like, Guardian Druids, like, Feral Tank Druids, excuse me, are very good because I personally love them. They are very sturdy. They are very good at AoE as well because it swipe, 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 and that's helps a lot. They don't die quickly. They have also a charge. So if like you're facing a caster, you could like go back, charge in to interrupt the cast, for example. It's not that bad, although pummel is probably easier to do, but even then, the only thing that is maybe a bit less desirable is purely the damage compared to arms. But I do believe like the dungeon goes way more smoothly with a druid tank than a warrior that is not optimized to tank. They will be tanking regardless because of threat. They will be doing a lot of damage. They will keep the aggro on them, but they are way more squishy. While protection warrior, they can survive a lot, but their AoE threat is not that good. And they are not doing too much damage, so it feels like a lesser version to like feral tanks. While in raids, it is probably like on the same level because obviously you're doing single target. But even then, you would prefer a Fury Warrior over a Protection Warrior. And I think it's a bit unfair for me to put a Fury Warrior B tier, so I'm gonna up them. It's like it's still good. Obviously, it's a tank. You could tank as a Fury Warrior, but AoE wise, it's not as important, I would say. Again, it's not like rated inside of it because I think it's too complicated to do so. So I'm gonna keep it like this. Hunter is I'm gonna put like a MM. Is for me very valuable. I like hunters because they can kite, they can pull, they can free, like they can put a frost trap, which is very valuable for the AoE as slow. It is frost trap or freezing trap. Like I'm very bad at names. I played 2019 Hunter, by the way. I played even in TBC, Wrath, and Cataclysm as a Hunter, so shame on me to not know the names, but still, I think that's a very good thing to have. So for me, it is like pretty much a A tier class in general. Like I don't know how people hate hunters, although they take a bit of gearing from everyone. They are just like one of the safest classes to have. They bring also attack power to warriors, so that's always going to be good. And they have an extra, like they have a pet that is extra man that can be valuable to survive in the group. And I find it very important to have a hunter while doing UBRS. Like if you're doing Ubers, I'm gonna call it like this. You need to have a hunter. So it could be S tier for Ubers, pretty much. But yeah, I really like hunters in general. What else can I discuss? Real quickly, we have warlocks. Let's talk about warlocks. I'm going to use the affliction one. I really like warlocks as well, so I'm going to put it in A tier. Although I don't think it's mandatory for me in my groups to have compared to a mage, but it brings like a lot of damage with hellfire, which I can shield it. They bring a lot of like utility, in my opinion, with fear, although you need to use it wisely. That's something that people should know. Deathcore also wisely, if you can use it, it's pretty awesome, but it's not like as safe as a polymorph because it doesn't stay in place. But you could put it in place with wreck, but people need to think about it. And the damage wise, it's quite good, but it's not on the same level as other DPSers in dungeons because mobs die very quickly, and you don't have the time to ramp up as much. But it's still like a good caster. Like I like playing with a warlock in my groups because of soulstone, because of obviously healthstone sometimes. It's also a bit sturdy as well. So I really like warlocks in general. They have like a fellow hunter if you need to kick. Again, most likely they're going to sack Succubus if they're playing DS Ruin, but still, it is what it is. Rogues, I'm not gonna lie, Rogues is valuable to me, but I don't know how valuable. I'm gonna put them at A tier as well. I think sapping is something that is very underrated. I do believe like their single target is very high. They can play daggers or can play swords, and I do believe as well they have some cleaving power with Blade Flurry, although that is pretty much ACD, so it's not always guaranteed for every single pack, but it is like a very good class. I actually enjoy playing with a rogue in my groups. It's not like it's again kind of selfish because it doesn't give too much buffs. Maybe improved exposed weakness, but they don't do that in dungeons. Like it's also not really their job in dungeons to do so. But in general, what they can bring is their burst damage, kidney shots, very strong, sheep shot at the start. Like again, you can control the fights pretty well and make them deal less damage by stunning your targets, which is very valuable to me. Like I even like running a rogue just guarantees me to have like a target being stunned, kicked, gouged sometimes to stop a cast, which is very important in specific dungeons. So I really enjoyed that as well. I think I talk about every single class. We have warrior, we have paladin, we have druid, we have mage, we have shaman, we have priest, we have warlock, we have rogue, and we have hunter. So I talked about every single class. If I'm not mistaken, every single spec as well. Again, if you are one of the D tiers or C tiers, it is what it is. I understand. I play priest myself. I could even put it in D tier, but I do believe like I find the damage not that bad. But it's just like pure AoE is lagging. That's the main point. While D tiers feels like the damage is even single target is not that high as well. And or you need to drink every single pack like a druid. So yeah, that's just pretty much my list. Again, don't be mad if you see protection warriors at B tier. That's purely the shield, like sword and board warrior, right? I prefer the two-handed build, for example. Again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.